Hi, I'm Steve Fennimore with the University of California, and I'd like to talk to you today about soil fumigants, about how to get weed control with soil fumigants. I am based in California, um, in Salinas, which is right at, if you just keep moving to the east of the tip of that red arrow, right here. Can I get this thing to move? Yeah. Um, and I'm in Salinas, which is right there. And this bay right here, which looks like a sea monster took a bite out of the coast of California, is Monterey Bay. And it has a lot to do with the fact, because it keeps the temperature fairly cool, but the fact that surrounding Monterey Bay, there are a lot of strawberries. And this is what it looks like. This is off of San Andreas Road, which is very close to Monterey Bay. This field is probably about 2 miles from the actual bay, the beach. So it's very mild, very foggy, and this picture was taken in June. It was probably about 65 degrees. So soil fumigants are applied to kill soil pests, nematodes, diseases uh, such as Fusarium, Phytophthora, Verticillium. These are diseases that can kill a plant and do if allowed to do so. And so because strawberry is such a valuable crop, I mean, the current budget for strawberries in California, according to our cost and return studies, is including the cost of harvesting, is over $60,000 an acre. I believe the actual number is 62,000. So it's growers tell me they use fumigants because they can't take the risk. So fumigants must be applied to the soil and so that it disperses and fills the soil volume where the pest lives, and that's where the rooting zone where you want to grow the strawberries. So the fumigants, of course, are toxic by nature. They're toxic to us as well as to the pathogens. They're not all equally toxic. Methylbromide is quite toxic, not something you want to be exposed to. So there's a number of soil fumigants, and all of these are still used to some degree, including methylbromide. And so the ones that are most important in California are 1,3-D, which is telone, piclor 60, and it's a number of formulations. It appears to work well with chloropicrin. Chloropicrin is applied, can be applied alone, or it can be applied with 1,3-D. The formulations that are very common in California, strawberry use, is piclor 60, which is a 60% chloropicrin and approximately 40% telone components. So it's a blend. Also, more recently, there's piclor 80, which is 80% chloropicrin and with a smaller amount of telone, the balance being 1,3-D. Methylbromide, still used in strawberry nurseries. California has two strawberry industries. It has the nursery industry, because of course strawberry is a vegetatively propagated crop, and so you have 3 or 4 years worth of plant increase going on in the nurseries until you finally get a plant that's ready to plant in the fruiting fields. And so they're using methylbromide because they're allowed to under the Montreal Protocol, because they are exempt because they export either to other states, say to Florida, or to Spain or other countries around the world. So methylbromide is still used, but not in fruiting fields. Metam sodium, it's not the primary fumigant. It's used as a secondary fumigant in strawberries anyway. Products, Baypam, Sectagon are the ones that the most common formulations. Then there's Dazimit or Bazimit, or if you want to flip the name around, called Temozad. Then there's AITC, which is a newer fumigant, allyl isothiocyanate, which is Not sold yet in California. We've tested it, but it is available in Florida. I'm not sure that it's used in Virginia or the other mid-Atlantic states. So this is a classic method of soil fumigation in California. This has been practiced for 50, 60 years. This is called flat fumigation or broadcast fumigation. The entire field is fumigated and it's covered with plastic, all of it. And the only reason the plastic is there is to trap the fumigant. So basically, it's like a process of laying roofing tile. I mean, they're injecting in shanks the fumigant, which is on the front. That happens to be the glue barrel right there. You can't see the fumigant from this picture. So the fumigant is being injected through shanks here, and then you've got a roll of plastic that's coming just behind that, and they're gluing it on the go. Like the glue gun is spraying on right there. And so it quickly is gluing, basically, so you get this overlap. This plastic is 13 feet wide, so you've got a foot that is used for the glue, and the leading edge of it is buried about a foot deep, and so you've got an 11-foot effective difference in the where the fumigant is being injected in the center. This is the other major way of applying fumigant, strip fumigation. We've got nitrogen driving this gas cylinder with chlorpicrin in it, which is being metered into a header line, which is going on into the beds under the plastic. No moving parts except for the water, which is moving. So the water, and through the irrigation drip line, is distributing the fumigant in water. It's a very neat and very accurate method. You can weigh the fumigant, you can measure it. This is the most precise way to measure the fumigant use. Fumigant injection is to weigh it. This is what we do in research plots. Another way of applying, say, metam sodium, and this is not terribly common in California. This picture is taken up in eastern Washington, the state of Washington, in potato country, potato and wheat country. So where they would treat a field before they, in the fall, before they plant potatoes the following spring into this field. This is just coming out of a wheat crop, and there's some volunteer wheat coming up, and that's one of the things they want to kill. So here's a slide of the properties of soil fumigants. We've got methyl bromide, chlorpicrin, 1,3-D, MITC, AITC. So there's a number of characteristics on here of these properties of these fumigants: the molecular weight, the density, the boiling point, the vapor pressure, and the solubility. So I'm going to click this off so I can see everything. So with methyl bromide, the most important thing here on this slide is the vapor pressure. So methyl bromide, you'll notice it's very different than the other fumigants. It's 1400. And you'll see a range of numbers here, 1400 to 1600. Methyl bromide is a gas. When you inject it into the soil, it disperses. It just blooms and fills the soil for a few hours. And that's what you want it to do, to disperse in the soil and kill the pathogens. It's an excellent soil fumigant because of that characteristic. Chlorpicrin is also very effective at controlling pathogens and to a certain extent controlling weeds, but it has a fairly low vapor pressure, and so it does not disperse like methyl bromide. And so the way I think of it is, methyl bromide is relatively easy to use, as if you could say applying fumigants is easy, which it's not, but methyl bromide is very dependable. With these other products, this is chlorpicrin, this is 1,3-D, This is VAPAM, MITC. This is AITC, which is extremely low. So they're all much less than methylbromide. That means you have to be very careful and work to make sure that they disperse in the soil to fill the entire zone. So sectagon is metam sodium. So basically it lists a number of weeds that it controls, chickweed, dandelion, ragweed, henbit, etc. You can, purslane are a few that I'm going to be talking about, but it's got a number of weeds on the label. So you can kill those weeds with metam. So kind of an overview of what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about weed seed. I'm going to talk about soil moisture. I'm going to talk about temperature. I'm going to talk about fumigant retention with regard to fumigant films. So let's talk about seed bank. So it all starts out with the mother plant, that is. She produces the seed. This is the case. This is a sow thistle. The seeds blow away and they fall onto the soil. Most weed seed has, to some extent, a degree of dormancy. In other words, they don't commit. Wild seed don't all germinate uniformly like a crop seed does. And so the seed wait in the soil. They're quite a bit of patience. They're waiting for more ideal conditions. So you can't be dormant forever, otherwise you'll die of old age, because the seed, they can last for years, but they can't last forever. And so they, through a process, it can be a physical or a physiological process, they become non-dormant. And what a seed wants to do, what it's made to do, is to become non-dormant, to germinate, and to grow and produce seed. That's what the weed wants to do. We don't want it to do that because it can do two sources of damage. It can compete with our crop, and it can make seed and make our life in the future more difficult because we will have more weeds if we let them go to seed. So we can kill this weed once it emerges, but it may cost us money in strawberries because we have to pay somebody to pull it by hand. So back to the seed bank. What we really want to do with the weed seed in the soil, we want to drive it, we want to kill it. And we can do that with fumigants, which drive it from even dormant seed. This is a misconception. People say you have to germinate the seed to kill them with a fumigant. No, you don't. You can kill a dormant weed seed, providing it's the right kind of seed. So that's what we want to do. You can also do that with solarization or steam, both of which have heat, which can cook the seed. So there are multiple ways to kill weed seed in the soil, whether they're germinating or not. So a little kind of nuance here, pre-emergence herbicides, they act in the soil too. They're different. They only act on germinating seed. So as the weed seed germinates, they act upon it and stunt it and prevent it from growing, and the seeds eventually die because they can't grow. They've germinated, they've committed to grow, but the herbicide is preventing them from growing. Then there are soil fumigants, which do something different. They kill the dormant and germinating seeds. So what these soil fumigants, or heat in the case of steam, they kill dormant seeds. So they can't germinate because they're dead. So fumigants do something different than say steam. Fumigants actually kill the respiration. So the plant cell has to respire to stay alive, just like we do. We all have cells that respire. Most every living thing, unless you're a yeast, they're dependent upon respiration, or you're an anaerobic bacteria. But I'm sure none of us are anaerobic bacteria. So fumigants interfere with respiration. That's how they kill. That's why they're lethal to us, because we do, or us and animals and a whole slew of things that are alive. So you must get the fumigant to the seed, which is what we're trying to control in the way of weed control. We're also trying to get it to the pathogen. So some weeds you can kill with fumigants and some you can't. So seeds that have permeable seed coats can be killed. Bluegrass, chickweed, shepherd's purse, and there are many others. Seeds with hard seed coats. These are hard to kill. Hard seed coats, hard to kill. Burclover, fillory, little mallow, sweet clover. We'll talk about these. So these are the easy ones, relatively easy. Bluegrass and chickweed and purslane are fairly easy. Knotweed is a little harder, but it's not terribly difficult. It just takes a little higher dose. These guys, on the other hand, are tough to kill with fumigants. Burclover, red stem fillory, sweet clover, little mallow. These have harder seed coats. So malva and clover. So they have this is like a cross section. So they have these impermeable seed coats. They have a layer which is a sclerid tissue. That's what walnut shell is. So it's not as thick as a walnut shell, but it's hard, and for a seed it's relatively impermeable. There is just a little opening, a chelacal cap. These can be made out of pectins and other things that melt, that break down eventually, because there isn't much profit to the weed in terms of staying dormant forever. They want to eventually germinate. This is a legume. In this case, it's a clover. It also has a very hard seed coat, and it has an opening which is very small and very limited gas exchange, because the seed is alive and it does need to, expel carbon dioxide. At that point it's not performing photosynthesis. It basically is like an animal. It needs to breathe, but it's very dormant and very restricted gas. These seed, some of the species can live in the soil for, better part of a century. 80 years would be an example, 40 to 80 years. So weed control with fumigants, the importance of soil moisture for weed control. I'm going to turn this back on. Why is this important? So soil moisture is a key factor that regulates the effectiveness of weed control. So if you look at the Sectagon label, it has a statement on the label: soil moisture should be about 50 to 80% of field capacity. And then it goes on to tell you, what does that look like? If you put the soil in your hand, you can make it into a ball, and it should be able to break up, not to be clay that you can mold into a pot. So basically it breaks apart. So it's not too wet, but it's moist. So why is soil moisture, seed moisture, soil moisture critical for the control of weed seeds? What's the big deal? So here's clover, burr clover to be exact. The one on the right, these are exactly the same, from exactly the same lot. I pulled them out of a bag of seed. They're all identical. So the difference is, the one on the right, we took that and we scratched it with sandpaper, just to force the issue, and then we put it on blotter paper. This one we didn't do anything to. We just took it out of the bag and put it on blotter paper. It's much smaller. This one is much bigger, because the plant cells in the embryo are absorbing moisture. There's nothing stopping the moisture to enter into the embryo. So it's basically time for launch. It's about to sprout. Another 24 hours and we would see, beginnings of a root on this. It's ready to grow. So there's nothing stopping the moisture from getting into the vacuoles and swelling all the cells. That's why this thing is 5 times larger than this. talking about thickness as well as height. So why is moisture a big deal? Because it's difficult to get a lethal dose of fumigant into the seed if it's dry. Why are dry seeds so difficult? Okay, so let's begin by putting this in perspective. So in the embryo, this is a malva, we've got plant cells. And in the plant cells, we've got all the organelles, like here's a mitochondria, and that's what we want to kill with a fumigant. Then we got vacuoles, which basically are serving to pump up the cell, to plump it up. So when the cell is moist, it's swollen and it's much larger. The vacuoles are full of moisture with salts and ions and whatever it has in there. So this is a wet cell. So here's the concept. Dry cells are collapsed. The vacuoles are very small, and the mitochondria are there. So basically everything is collapsed in the dry cell, and it's very hard, and it takes a long time for the fumigant to get in. So what you want to do is you want a big burst of fumigant to get into the cell very quickly and kill the embryo. You want that done in a couple of days at maximum. You want that to happen. So if you got a dry cell, it's very hard. It takes a long time, and the fumigant would enter very slowly. Whereas when it's wet, there's fewer obstacles for the molecule to get in and get access to the mitochondria and kill them. You kill the mitochondria, that cell is dead. You do that in all the cell, or a large number of the cells, and you kill the embryo, which is what you want to do with fumigants. So it's difficult to kill dry seed because the fumigant cannot penetrate quickly. The name of the game with fumigants is speed. You want it quickly to get in because the fumigants, they break down very quickly. I mean, we apply fumigants. We want them there at a high concentration, and then we want them gone. So we're asking a lot of the chemical. So we have to do things in a hurry. And so we want a high concentration. We want overwhelming concentration to kill those soil pests. Temperature. One of the things we can control, we can choose the day we go out and do the fumigation. This is off of the METAM, the sectagon label. Basically the time of fumigation, the soil temperature at 3 inches should be 40 Fahrenheit to 90 Fahrenheit. So pretty wide range, a 50-degree range of temperatures that work. So this is an experiment from a paper that looked at the rate of metamsodium which was required to kill 50% of these weeds. So let's look at this graph. This is the pounds of metam that are needed to kill 50%, and this is knotweed, chickweed, purslane, and nutsedge. So we got 4 weeds. So the white bar is the rate required to kill 50% of them at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pink bar is at 68, so the amount required. And so you'll notice in all cases with knotweed, chickweed, purslane, and nutsedge that less fumigant, less metamsodium is required at 68 degrees than at 50. Just because things happen more quickly at 68 degrees. And again, with fumigants, the ideal is fast. You want to get in, kill them, and then degrade. So generally the control is better at higher temperatures than at lower temperatures. Tarps. Traditionally, plastic tarps used in California, 20 years ago, they were all high-density polyethylene. And so these are somewhat restrictive on fumigant emissions, but they're not nearly as much as what we're using now with the impermeable films. So the impermeable films are designed to slow the release of fumigants because we're trying to trap the fumigant in the soil. We're trying to get our money's worth out of the fumigant. And so totally impermeable film, TIF, the product that I'm going to be talking about here is Vapor Safe, which is from a company, Raven, which is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's a very good film, and it works quite well. So there are broadcast films, Vapor Safe, and there are also one set up for drip irrigation. So this is a trial that we did. I'm going to turn this off again. So a number of years ago, we applied fumigants in 3.5 hours in 1.5 inches of water. The treatments that we tested here were methyl bromide at 350 pounds. This is a standard, and we had a control, which no fumigation. We had Pichlor 60. This is 60% chlorpicrin and a little less than 40% of 1,3-D. Applied at 50, 100, 200, 300, and 400 pounds per acre. And of course, the control served as our 0 pounds per acre. So we use Vapor Safe film. So what's Vapor Safe film? It's basically a plastic sandwich. They have polyethylene on the top and the bottom. So that's the bread in your sandwich. And so the salami and the mayonnaise and the lettuce in the middle are products, basically layers that are made to prevent fumigant emissions. So they're trapping it. They wouldn't, basically this is an ethylene vinyl alcohol, which is not durable enough to stand on its own. So you need the polyethylene to basically, it adds to the strength of it and allows you to do things like stretching, and at least somewhat stretching, because growers want to be able to stretch tightly, put their film down so that they trap the film on the plastic, because where we use bed fumigation, drip fumigation, the plastic remains, could be on the field for a year. And so this plastic that we're using, the Vapor Safe, was 1.4 mils. We measured the gas retention under the plastic, so we poked holes and took gas measurements with this volatile organic compound meter, VOC meter, and we measured the fumigant concentration at 3, 8, 24, 48, 96, and 145 hours. The name of the product, the name of the VOC is made by called a mini ray. So there are, in this trial, there were 4 replicates and 2 film. We had a standard film, which was not permeable, which was permeable, and then we had the TIF, the Eval Mitsui plastic, which was the impermeable plastic. So fumigant retention. So these are our rates of Pichlor 60, 0 up to 400. We had, this column is TIF, and we had the meter readings at 0. At 50 pounds, we had 264. 100, we had 392. 855, 1060, and all the way up to 400 pounds, we had 11 and 25. You'll notice that the concentration was less under the standard film, and it was significantly less at the 200, 300, and 400 pounds, significantly less. Why? Because this plastic is more permeable, and so the fumigant is coming out of the soil, and it's basically going through the plastic and up into the air, and it's gone. This is trapping, the TIF is trapping the fumigant, and it's still working for us. So that's where we want it. We want it to stay in the soil, working for us, getting our money's worth out of the product. So this is what it looked like over the course. We did this for about 12 days. And the fumigant, so this bottom bar is the standard. And so here it is over the time course. They ended up by 145 hours, they were in exactly the same place. But under the standard plastic, the concentration, this is the concentration as measured by the mini-ray VOC meter. So basically we're losing the fumigant very quickly under the standard plastic. Whereas under the TIF, the concentration is higher. And so for up to 100 hours, the concentration of the fumigant was higher under the TIF plastic, the impermeable film. Afterwards, the fumigant, I mean, it's degrading. This is a loss. So we're not so much lost through the atmosphere, it's basically degrading. And so at a certain point, both of them, the standard plastic has lost more to the atmosphere. The TIF has lost more to just simply chemical degradation. So the TIF traps the film. So what does it do to our pests? We have weed densities. This is basically a cumulative weed density for the season. Again, the rates and including methyl bromide. And what we see are the weed densities under the TIF. At 100 pounds, what this yellow means is that we had significantly fewer weeds in season. We had less than half that we did under the standard film. Why do we have so many fewer weeds at 100 pounds, which is not a lot of fumigant? Because we trapped our fumigant and we got more value from the fumigant under the TIF, and so it killed more weed seed under this than under the standard plastic. Because under the standard plastic, which lost the fumigant, we didn't have the concentration there that we needed to kill the weed seed. And so you'll see that after 200 pounds and above, the weed control was quite good. Whereas on the standard plastic, it was more slow. With methyl bromide, we didn't see that much difference. Methyl bromide is good. This was applied at a higher rate. Methyl bromide is just plain good. So we don't see as much effect. Yellow nutsedge. So you can kill yellow nutsedge with Picklor 60. So at 100 pounds, we saw that the viability of nutsedge tubers was less than half of what it was under the standard film. So what this means is under the TIF, where we did not have fumigant, we had 74% of the tubers, the nutsedge tubers, were alive. At 50 pounds, we had a significant drop. It was 45%. And then at 100, we had only 13% viable. Compare that to the standard. Once we get up to 200, then we start killing them. We kill the nutsedge under either plastic, and so there's not that much difference. But this is why we apply this range of doses, so that we can find these sublethal or marginal doses where we can pick up differences. That's what we want to do. We want greater sensitivity. With purslane, we saw the difference at 50 pounds of the lowest rate of fumigant. And so we had the purslane was 23% viable under TIF, whereas at 53%. So there was basically no effect of the fumigant under the standard plastic, whereas under the TIF was a significant improvement in weed control with just 50 pounds of Picklor 60. So fruit yield, we're doing all this to grow fruit. This is what the farmer makes money on. And so what's the effect on fruit yield? So we have on this graph, we have the control, Pic 60, 100, 200, 300, 400, and then we have methyl bromide. So this is the grams per plant on this axis. And so what we see is the red bar is the TIF. And so the red bar that was significantly higher at 100 and 200. So we got more fruit from the TIF than of the standard. Why do we get more fruit at those from the TIF? Because we're trapping the fumigant, and presumably at this particular field it was Pythium. We're killing more pathogen because we're trapping the fumigant. That's what we want to do. We want to trap the fumigant and kill the pest, and then we want the fumigant gone. So you don't see as much difference at the higher rate because there's enough fumigant applied under both plastics to adequately produce the yield. But the trend was under the Picklor 60 is that the yield was higher in all cases, only significant at 100 and 200. But numerically, the trend is it's highest under the TIF all the way across. So VaporSafe increases the fumigant concentration for a longer period of time. It improves the weed control and the strawberry yield. Synergism. This will be the last thing I'm going to talk about with you today. It's an interaction between two chemicals such that when the two chemicals are combined, the effect is greater than when they're applied alone. So this is a paper on Vapam, metam, plus chloropicrin. This is using nutsedge, yellow nutsedge, as the indicator, the species, the weed that we're trying to kill. And so they had, this is reported in micromoles, as in the paper, basically all the way up to a very, very high rate of metam sodium. This is only 17% chloropicrin, the rest of it's metam. So, and then we had methyl bromide as the standard. So this is a graph. So on the across this axis we have the concentration. To the right we have a higher concentration. To the left we have 0 and the very, very low concentrations. We have methyl bromide and we have metam sodium. These are in combination with chloropicrin. So the solid bar is methyl bromide applied alone. When we apply it with chloropicrin, we shift the curve to the left. What does that mean? That means we need less fumigant to get the same amount of control, of pest control. So that's good. So that's synergy. With metam sodium, we see the same effect, that when we use metam sodium with chloropicrin, we shift the curve to the left. It means we need less metam when we apply it with chloropicrin. So there is synergy here. But these chemicals can't necessarily be applied on the same day. The best way to work with chloropicrin would be to apply it first and then wait a week. This is typically what's done in California. It's a sequential application. You follow it with metam sodium. So what do you get for your money by applying the second application? You get very good weed control with the metam sodium, and you get a little boost in soil-borne disease control. So in summary, you can kill soft-coated weed seeds whether they germinate or not, but you have to have good soil moisture. Fumigants work better in warm conditions than cold. Impermeable films improve weed control. Why? Because they trap the film. And then fumigant combinations with PIC are often better. They are complementary or synergistic. And so this is a scene from the strawberry nurseries way up in Northern California. That's Mount Shasta in the background. It's a pretty place. It's a long ways from anywhere. Very isolated area.